Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning for Faith in Our Hometown. We are glad that you've chosen to spend part of your Sunday morning with us, and we're glad that you're here. So my guests this morning are going to be talking about something we started to talk a little bit about a few weeks ago. We thought we'd want to make another run at it because I think it's one of those things we need to raise our awareness here in the community. There are many people in our community here who are what we would call food insecure, which means that they're one little incident away from not being able to put food on their tables. There's a lot of misunderstanding about who those people are. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that this morning, about maybe what some of those myths are that we've created in our own minds about those who might be in a position of being food insecure. And so my guests this morning are going to be Debbie Markman from Economic Security and Rodney Rambo, who is the new executive director over at Crosslines. And we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute to talk a little bit about food insecurity and maybe some of those myths surrounding that issue here in our own community. So grab your coffee, stay with us.
I was in shock, and in denial, and I couldn't believe it was me. I was healthy, feeling well, but unbeknownst to me, after the colonoscopy, I found out that I had colon cancer. My name's Guerrero. I'm an ethicist. I help people that are in a hospital and the medical staff process some of the difficult situations. In this case, it was the other way around.
Well, I'm glad I caught it earlier.
On my 50th birthday, I had a regular checkup. I wasn't concerned because I felt well. No family history of this type of cancer, and yet I developed this type of cancer. During the process of the colonoscopy, they were able to remove that polyp. And having that done within the hospital setting, they can just address all the issues right there and then. I'm a great believer in early detection. This is such a silent disease, and you really don't necessarily have symptoms. Go get checked. Follow up with your physician. Don't wait.
Well, again, thanks for staying with us for another Sunday morning here at Faith in Our Hometown. Again, my guest this morning, Rodney Rambo, who's the new executive director over at Crosslines, and Debbie Markman, who's over at Economic Security. So first, introduce yourselves a little bit, and then let's talk a little bit about food insecurity and some of the myths surrounding it.
Yeah, so I coming up on a year at Crosslines, so still get my feet underneath me, but I'm super blessed to get to work with so many of the great churches here in our community.
Yeah.
And thankful. I kind of grew up here in Joplin, and so it's just great to get to interact with the faith community on a day-to-day basis.
Well, good. It's good to have you. I know we haven't had you on the show yet. I've had your predecessors on before, but not you. So welcome.
Thank you.
Debbie?
And I'm Debbie Markman, and I've been with Economic Security Corporation for about 30 years. And
That's
so
a little longer than you.
Yeah, she's got me.
Yes, a little bit. And I have worked with homelessness and hunger and housing for a long time. So those are areas that I'm very passionate about.
Mm-hmm. So we have some myths in our community about who are the people who are food insecure. And for folks who may not have seen our earlier show a few weeks ago about this. So first let's talk about what is it to be food insecure, and then what are some of the myths surrounding that? Because I think we get a lot of things in our head about, well, those are those kind of people or whatever, and most of the time they're not really those kind of people. They're a completely different demographic that we sometimes don't think about at all.
Yeah, so many times we think of those who are food insecure as those who are unemployed, or those who, we use terms like working the system in some of our myths and things like that. And the truth is that here in our community, that's not what we see at all. At Crosslines, we serve about 1,900 people a month, and 85% of the households who are served through Crosslines are employed. That's a stat that people are always kind of surprised to hear.
They're shocked to hear that. They're like, what do you mean these people have jobs and they still have to need help with food?
Yeah, I mean, we're open on Monday evenings specifically because so many of our people are employed and they can only come in the evening. So we're open on Monday night from 4 to 7 just because of the high percentage majority of our folks who are employed. So that's one of those. That's definitely one of those myths that that affects our community a great deal.
Sure, and again, people just say, these are people that are just not working and just trying to, get something for nothing, and really so often, like you say, now, and I'm not saying that there are not some of those people. Sure, we've all encountered people through the years who want to, who will take whatever we're willing to hand out, but of the 85%, that's a large majority that is definitely not just sitting back and saying, take care of me. They're just trying to take care of their families.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be food insecure in that regard?
Well, it has to do with the number of meals or the number of food groups that you may be able to access. And so often we have families, especially in the summertime, where their children are not in schools. Our free and reduced lunches in Joplin schools is the low end is 46%. And then we have one school that the minimum is usually about 86%, but it can also rise up to 90%.
Qualify for their free and reduced lunches.
Absolutely. So you're talking about the breakfast and the lunch that they're receiving. So in the summertime, they often are not getting those meals. There are good news is there are some summer feeding sites that you can just find out, and any child and family member can actually go and have a meal there. So that's helpful.
And our number of kids, like say for example, St. Peter's outreach, that goes up during the summer because we have people who are just like saying, I'm coming in here because I want my kids to make sure my kids get a good meal today. You know? Yeah.
And I think part of that too is if you've got older kids that are maybe teens or tweens, then sometimes you're buying your food maybe once a month, and if they're home by themselves, they may eat a lot of that food in the first week, and so all of a sudden the food that you thought you'd have for the rest of the month may not be there. So I think there's just a variety of reasons for why we have food insecurity in our area.
And that just basically means that sometimes, family will run short and whatever, or trust me, I've heard stories of, somebody got sick and so it was like, either pay for my medicine or I pay for the food. And, and it's just like, oh my gosh, to be that close to the, to the edge there, to where, it's just like, okay, so I'll stay sick for a little while and I won't, won't kill this infection because I can't afford my antibiotics because I want to make sure my kids are eating. And those kind of stories are the ones that'll break your heart, to do some of those things. So what do we do? How do we fix this? How do we make a difference here in our greater Joplin area?
Well, I think the first thing, and one of the reasons we're so grateful to be here today, is first all of us just carrying the burden of educating and having right information. I think what we see a lot, I experience this in the church, I experience this in my neighborhood, is it's a lot easier to just buy into those myths. Like, that makes me feel a lot better. Like, that's an easy myth to buy into and then move along with my life. But what's really difficult is to actually get to know what my neighbor, a few doors down, is actually going through and what their life is really like. You talk about those choices. So many of the people that come into Crosslines, we help folks with rental and utility assistance too, and a lot of times they're really in that place of, do I pay that electric bill from that really hot month we had last month where my utilities were high, or do I buy groceries? And those are real choices people have to make every day, and it's really difficult. Like you just said, like, that breaks your heart. Like, when we move past those myths, when we really get to know our neighbors, it does break our heart, but it allows us to enter in. It allows us to be a part of the solution.
Which is why we have organizations like Crosslines, is again founded by the churches of the Joplin area that says, okay, we got to do something to help feed our neighbors. How do we do that?
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I'm a pastor of a local church, and we are a Crosslines church because we're a small church, and by ourselves, benevolence ministry would be, we'd be pretty limited in what we can do. But as a small church, when we get to partner with these other churches in the community, well, now we get to be a part of having a large impact, and we get to be a part of the body of Christ, meeting the immediate needs of our neighbors. And so, that's It's just it's an amazing thing to get to be a part of, and that's a way, you know, when you support Crosslines. I mean, Crosslines is a vessel through which the local church and the local community, we can say we're better together. We can do this better together.
Yeah. And again, you know, I love the fact that, you know, you've got some case managers and things like that who are better able to, like, you know, track some of those things. I think that in some ways it makes it easier for us to figure out how to help by you know, having some of that done centrally rather than spreading it out. You know,
Sure.
You know, that I'm going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to do this. It's like it makes it a little tougher. Whereas if I get a call from you saying, okay, we're trying to put together a little coalition to help this specific need in this specific place. You've done the case management. I mean, that's why we have Catholic Charity, same thing.
Right.
You know, it's just like, okay, let's put those case managers on there and figure out, again, not just to put a Band-Aid on, but to really help fix the situation rather than just doing the Band-Aids,
Right.
which I think is important.
Yeah. And that's a big part. I mean, being able to, when the local church together can have caseworkers through Crosslines, you know, there is that occasional person who maybe their need is bigger, it's more deeply rooted, and we're able to help identify that. And we have great partners, great organizations in Joplin like Economic Security that we can work with to even help identify some of those larger issues and those deeper things.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of that, so educating is one of the things that we need to do, and that's obviously why you're here tonight or today to talk about that as we you know, as we kind of address this issue of food insecurity, because we've been trying to talk about it a lot throughout the summer.
Right.
Now that we're into the fall, you know, again, it's not that we've solved it or that it's going away. We still got to be talking about it. So in terms of that, how do we take care of some of that? So education is one of those things. What else do we do?
Well, I think looking at the whole issue together, and I think Rodney's really hit hard on, we have to work on this together. And it's just like in the summer, you know, we mentioned that we have free and reduced lunches when school's in, and now there's a push to have summer feeding sites. So we have those two things kind of going hand in hand. But like Boys and Girls Club in the summertime, they can feed over 300 children in an evening. And that's huge to be constantly doing that. So I think, again, how do our neighbors reach out from their time, treasure, and talents? And how do we help? Children that don't have appropriate nutrition or aren't eating correctly are not going to learn well. And if they're not learning well, then that affects our future economy. They're going to be our future employees. Yep. So I think we have to kind of pick this up together and say, okay, what can I do even in my neighborhood? We know who they are, right? We probably do because we know our neighbors. Yeah. And if we don't know our neighbors, then we do probably have to get out of our comfort zone and maybe go do a visit when somebody moves in. I mean, how many times now do you know when a new neighbor moves in, do you bring them something for that night while they're moving in?
Yeah. I mean, the old traditional thing of, oh, here we brought you a meal so that you don't have to, while you're unpacking, so that at least you don't have to do that tonight.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and again, I think that so many of our folks, you know, here in the Joplin area are so good-hearted about trying to take care of some of those needs of their brothers and sisters out there, but again, they don't necessarily know where or how to do that. And we're going to talk a little bit about more where and how in our second segment here. But we're going to take a quick break, and my guests this morning have been Rodney Rambo from Crosslines and Debbie Markman from Economic Security. We are going to be right back after a quick break, so fill up that coffee cup, warm it up, and we're going to be right back.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Okay, so we've been talking a little bit about food insecurity here this morning, again with my guests, Debbie Markman from Economic Security and Rodney Rambo from Crosslines. So again, how are we going to take care of some of those neighbors out there?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess one of the real practical examples is we need folks in our community who will, because of that education, as we are learning, as we are getting to know and some of those things, who are willing to partner fiscally. We are in a great community where we have a lot of different organizations. Debbie mentioned Boys and Girls Club, and I mean, there's all these places who are taking part together and trying to, to fix this issue and to feed our neighbors. And so, consider, taking part in that. Consider taking part in that effort. I know folks who are, they'll talk about how they're uncomfortable, giving money at the stoplight to the person who's asking for help. And I can understand some of what they're saying. But what you can do, you can partner with some of these organizations who, like Crosslines, who we do have caseworkers. We are being diligent. We are stewarding what's given, and we're very transparent with all of that. When you give $25 to Crosslines, you are feeding 2 families for 2 weeks, and that's because of some of the unique partnerships we have that allow us to buy food at a greatly reduced rate through the Feed America program. So, you can't really get around to that. The obvious, partnering fiscally is huge.
So if somebody wanted to make donations to Crosslines, how would they do that?
Yeah, so you can give to Crosslines at crosslinesjoplin.org. Or, we always love when neighbors drop in. I mean, you can come to Crosslines. We're open from 10 to 2, Tuesday through Friday, and then Monday from 4 to 7, and you can come in. And, I love welcoming people into my office and receiving that donation. And a lot of times those are opportunities for me to give a tour, for me to introduce you to some of those folks you're helping to support. I mean, we are very, very much for the community. So we'd love to have you just drop in and do that as well.
Well, and again, I think that's important because that helps with that education piece we were talking about earlier. The people aren't afraid of it. They actually see what's happening, or they get to know folks who actually work in the area. It's again so easy to stand in judgment of something when you're farther away from it. But the closer you get to it, the more you understand it. And you might still have some criticism, but you're not going to be able to dismiss it quite so easily when you're actually in the building and seeing what's happening, and you're going, so $25, 2 weeks, huh?
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes a big difference.
Right, it really does. And when you kind of think about the numbers of people experiencing that, and I said there was like 46% of our children that were receiving free and reduced lunch, you can almost say that's going to be 50% of your neighborhood, anywhere you go in Joplin. Yeah. And so when you look out your door, I think it's just about kind of reaching out again and being good neighbors and trying to help each other out, however you can do it, so that again that person can get what they need and not have to make those decisions or those tough decisions.
Yeah.
Now talk a little bit about the service area that you guys do from Crosslines. So how big of a range do you have in terms of a service area?
Yeah, so we serve folks in Joplin, Webb City, and Carl Junction, and then there are obviously we have folks that come in from other parts of the region, but we're able to point them to folks in those regions who are doing what Crosslines does in that place, and so we all the time we help people out just by pointing them in the right direction, but we primarily serve folks in Joplin, Webb City, and Carl Junction, and our immediate,
And of course, there are other organizations in our further, our area that springs out from there. I mean, I know there are organizations in Carthage and Lamar and all those places that do some of those other things.
Yeah.
They just do them in those other communities.
Right.
But this is what Crosslines serves.
Yeah.
Deb, what is economic security? What is your service area?
Our service area, we cover Barton, Jasper, Newton, and McDonald counties. And our role has always, just as you talked about doing food pantries, we had done those as well. And over the years, you learn at some point that we really are stronger and better together. And so we decided that Crosslines and the Good Samaritan, the Crosslines in Neosho and Carthage, all of those, we're going to do a much better job in letting us do things that we do well. And that's obviously, we really want to strengthen our families. And so that's to build them so that they are out of poverty and they feel like they're economically secured. And again, What that might mean to you might mean something different, but again, that family sets their goals and decide, this is where we're going to be comfortable at, and so that's our strength within our agency.
So give me an example of a family you've worked with in the last few weeks that you've helped to better their situation through some of the work that you all do.
Sure. We have a homeless employment program that we run about 3 or 4 times a year, and we just completed the initial 2 weeks. And I was just talking to the young lady that was teaching that class, and 80% of her folks were veterans, and they were homeless vets, and all but one person had a job that I talked to today and are working. And so that's exciting. And then her next steps with them, because she continues to work with them, is to get them housed stably. And so she has about a 60% rate of getting folks stably housed. And so I think that's really exciting. Veterans are tough for me because they've served their country.
Sure.
And when they don't have a place to call their own, I think that we maybe aren't doing the right things in our country. So I really, that makes me feel good.
Yeah, and just trying to make that difference, or even just knowing that you made the difference in the lives of a few people, sometimes is what keeps you going from week to week, month to month. Yeah. When you see the difference that it's made in some of those areas. Yeah. So education, certainly monetary donations. Okay. What else can we do to maybe make a difference in the lives, making sure that folks have got enough to eat in our community?
I think take action. If you're not doing volunteer work somehow, then I think you really should evaluate that. I don't think people have to do 8 hours every week. But if you're not volunteering, think about, taking a step of 2 to 4 hours a month and do it as a family. There's great stuff you can do at Crosslines. There's things to do in our community, just a wide range. Find something you're passionate about and get involved. And I really think, we will take care of our own community, and some things will level out. And maybe I won't have a job anymore.
Yeah, that'd be good. But I'm not gonna hold my breath for a while. I think we got a little work to do in terms of some of that. But it would be great. Wouldn't it be great if we were all unemployed in terms of trying to to help solve the world's problems, to some degree, or help others solve their problems. So
maybe in just our little chasm, that might be all right.
That might probably be good. I'd go for it anyway. At least be willing to try. So volunteering, and I think you make a great plug there for especially getting families to do that. Yeah, I think that'd be wonderful. What if every viewer out there would find some kind of volunteer service for their family? Now, there's a challenge for everybody who's watching today. Just say find something to volunteer at for maybe a couple hours, even a couple hours a month. Wouldn't that make a big difference in the way that the world would look if everybody was working for volunteering for somebody else a couple hours a month?
Right, and that could be your neighbor. Maybe you mow their yard for them because they can't, or you go trim trees. Volunteering doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to an organization, and I think sometimes we forget that. If you're taking care of your parent who can't take care of themselves, and you are taking, that is volunteerism. And I think, we have to look at the broader picture, but if you really aren't doing anything, and I think it's exciting to do things with children, they are so excited to help. And it really drives you, I think, for your passion to watch them when they get excited about whatever they're doing.
And it gives you the opportunity to change your perspective. I had a man come into my office a couple months ago. He was an older gentleman, and he just kind of tearfully confessed to me that he kind of came to Crosslines and volunteered reluctantly because his church came. He had kind of bought into some of those myths, and he just confessed that after a few weeks of coming to Crosslines and coming face to face and hearing stories and putting food in people's baskets, he realized he had been wrong all of his life about what he believed about poverty. And so taking that action is, it's good. It's not just for the service of others, but it's good for your own soul as well.
Yeah, and I do think that I think that's also one of those things that it's a universal truth that when we help somebody else, we're really in a lot of ways helping ourselves.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you any time that I've done something for somebody else that I didn't receive back something from that encounter that just has made me open my eyes a little bit more, or see something a little bit different. I mean, I just don't, there's so many times when I will, go to our own, outreach house and do something and, or sit and just visit with people, and I think to myself, I'm lucky. I don't have to worry about going to the grocery store. I don't have to worry about buying what I want. I don't even have to worry about watching, my, to make sure that I only spend X amount each time that I'm there. I'm really kind of privileged, I mean, it's a real blessing, and just to know that somebody else has to, okay, I'm going to buy this week as opposed to this because I'm not going to be able to stretch this enough because the kids are home and it's summer. So, instead of this, we're going to buy this so that we can make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm eating beans and rice, it's because I'm in the mood to eat beans and rice, not because I have to eat beans and rice, to do some of the things. So we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Don't go away.
A new baby changes the world and each of us. The Sisters of Mercy devoted themselves to offering exceptional maternity and delivery care, training generations of nurses to do the same. Mercy continues to answer the same call, to not only care for your baby, but to cherish them too. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy. Everyone on board dreamed of a new life in America. The Sisters of Mercy had a different dream, to serve all who had need. From the first hospital Sister Frances Ward built to the world's first virtual care center, we continue to answer the same call, to bring mercy home to you. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy.
Well, thanks for sticking with us for another Sunday morning. We're glad that you join us every time that you do, and we're grateful for you watching. Please be sure to write in if you've got ideas or comments for us. Just let us know. You can write the station or let us know. We've been talking this morning a little bit about hunger, about volunteerism, how we help change this greater Joplin community to maybe be a little bit more careful in the way that we care for each other. And so my guests this morning, again, were Debbie Markman from Economic Security and Rodney Rambo from Crosslines, two of our local organizations that help us to try to, on behalf of a larger coalition of people, reach out and help our neighbors who might need some of our assistance. We were talking about the myths that are involved here. And what we really talked about this morning is that a lot of people that come to Crosslines for food are not the unemployed, but they're actually 85% of them are the working folks that just have trouble stretching. Let's keep those things in mind. Join us next week for Faith in Our Hometown. I hope you have a great Sunday.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.